Hey, what's going on, Shrimp Keepers? It is Saturday, which means it's Shrimp Saturday. And today I want to talk about substrate. But before I get into substrate, the reason that I'm talking about it is because last week there were so many questions with water chemistry and remineralizing water and GH and KH and what all that stuff means. And so I figured I would talk about substrate today, both inert substrate and buffered substrate, what I use and why I use it. But before I do, I did want to do a shout out to Jeff, my intern. Today was his last day. His family came up. Jeff killed it. Without him, I mean, we would not even have close to the amount done as we do. I mean, he was just a great worker, helped out a lot. So thank you, Jeff, if you're watching this. I really appreciate everything you did, man. It was awesome. But all right, so moving on, substrate. So first I want to talk about some inert substrate. I'll show you the tanks that we use. Before I actually show you the tanks, we use pool filtered sand in all of our tanks now. We used to use black diamond blasting sand. I don't recommend it anymore. We just had too many issues with it, and the way that they prepare the black diamond blasting sand is sometimes they recycle and they use petroleum, and they don't really tell you, so you really don't know if you're getting a good batch or a bad batch, and that stuff will wipe out a tank. So anyway, it wasn't worth the risk anymore, so it's just pool filtered sand in every tank that gets inert substrate. So let me show you some examples of some inert substrate, and then after that we'll get into some buffered substrate. Alright, so right now you're looking at a call tank. There's just a lot of like tigers and different things like that in here. Really nothing special. You can see there's quite a few buried females. There's a lot of chocolate rabbit snails and different things like that. But this is a tank that I used to set them up this way, and what I realized is this was too much substrate. This is about 1 inch of substrate. You only want about 1/2 inch. There's just too much debris gets down in there, and it's not good. But the best inert substrate that we have found is pool filtered sand. You can get this off of what is it, like pretty much any pool distributor. Let me show you the package that I get it in, which I know it's dark, but it's aqua quartz, and it's highly purified filtered sand. And so that's the brand, everything like that. Packaging, really that's all the packaging is, just right there. So it's a great product. They increased the price on me because I bought so much. Those stinkers. It's actually $10 for 50 pounds, which isn't terrible. I actually, because I know some people aren't able to get it, so I might start offering it on the website. Granted, I'd have to charge a little bit more than what I get it for, just because the amount of time it would take to rebag it and stuff like that and break it down into like 1 pound bags and stuff. But that's always an option. But anyway, that's besides the point. So that's the brand that I use. I use pool filtered sand. It usually comes in pretty clean. This is what I recommend. So this is a newly set up tank. You got about 1/4 inch in the bottom of it, maybe 1/2 inch in some places. So just a very, very light, very light amount of it. And basically all this is for bacteria to colonize in. It's not too deep that like debris will get down in it. What will happen is debris will sit on the top of it in this small, like in this depth of substrate. Not the bacteria, the debris will sit on top of it, and the shrimp will 9 times out of 10 eat it up. Sorry, it's been a long day, so I apologize for my slurred talking. Anyway, so that's what I recommend. I found that is the best method, just because there isn't as much buildup of gases and different things like that, and so you really don't have to worry about the gas buildups. You don't have to have as many Malaysian trumpet tails and stuff like that. So this is, again, another tank that's set up, again, about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of substrate. So inert substrate is great for Neocaridina, which are like your cherry shrimp, your fire reds, your orange sakura, your orange pumpkins, all that kind of stuff, your yellows, anything like that, anything Neocaridina genius, inert substrate is good for. And almost all tiger shrimp is great for inert substrate. So this is great for a lot of different types of shrimp. The only tiger shrimp that I would recommend buffered substrate for is for tangerine tigers. And I just use pool filtered sand, or not pool filtered sand. I actually use a buffered substrate for them. And so what that means is a buffered substrate, for everyone that doesn't know, it's a substrate that helps influence the pH of a tank. And so in an inert substrate tank, there's nothing buffering really the pH. So the pH is gonna find a happy medium wherever it is, and it's gonna rest there. So it's whether it's 7.6 or 7.8 or 8.2, it's just gonna rest wherever it is. And so when you start using buffered substrate, that means that the substrate is gonna help pull down the pH to a lower degree, so it'd be more like 6.6 or 6.8, anything below 7. So inert substrate is anything above 7 most of the time. I mean, there are exceptions, but inert substrate represents above 7, and buffered substrate represents below 7. And so, so buffered substrate. So let me talk about this tank first. So for tangerine tigers and crystals, I always use Flooville shrimp stratum. And so that's what, sorry about the lighting, this thing. Anyway, so what I use is the Flooville shrimp stratum for them. The reason I use it is because it doesn't buffer the water as much as some of the others. It only buffers it to about maybe 6.6 or 6.8. It doesn't really get it down too low. Let me turn this light up real quick. And then these are some of my crystal tanks. And again, you can see Flooville shrimp stratum. And this stuff has been really good for me. One of my favorite things about it is the price. It's very inexpensive for what it is. I mean, it's definitely a lot cheaper than the other options out there. And it holds up pretty good. So the biggest thing with buffered substrate is you want to try to achieve water chemistry with a KH of 0. And last week on Shrimp Saturday, I'll link that video down below. I talked about remineralizing RO water and using GH plus or GH and KH plus. For buffered substrate tanks, it's better. And what I mean by buffered substrate is like the Flooville shrimp stratum. And so I recommend usually only using the KH because if you're using KH and GH, or only GH, man, there's too many GHs and KH. So let me clarify, just to make sure we're on the same page. For buffered substrate tanks like the one you're looking at, it's better to only increase the GH. And so it's best to have a KH of 0. And by having a KH of 0, it allows you to dictate what the pH is going to be a lot easier. The more KH, which is carbonate hardness, the more carbonate hardness you have in a tank, the harder it is for your buffered substrate to buffer. And so your pH is going to, it's still going to be lowered, but it's not going to be lowered for as long of a time. So if I had a carbonate hardness, which is KH, of 0 in this tank, this substrate would probably last 2 years, a year and a half, 2 years. If I had a KH of 3, this substrate may only last a year and a half to a year. And so that's where that kind of comes in. So I know a couple people were confused last week, and so I did want to clarify on that. And so, to tell you the truth, and this is going to confuse you again, and I'm sorry for it, I actually use GH and KH, and let it ruin this substrate quicker. The reason I do this is because I've found that crystals and tangerine tigers breed well with a little extra KH. They don't need it, but that's what I found, so I just kind of stuck to it. So that's just my little 2 cents. I apologize, it's super confusing. But Flooville shrimp stratum, in my opinion, is one of the cheapest and best methods here in the United States to breed either crystal reds, crystal blacks, or tangerine tigers. And so that's that. So now the next thing is Taiwan bees. So let me turn this light up again. So we got pure red line, we got Taiwan bees in here, and PRLs in here, which is pure red line. And so what I actually used in here was Brightwell, and you can see down at the bottom of the screen. And oh, I got a good tip for you guys too. So Brightwell is one of those ones I don't really know yet. I haven't used it long enough, so I don't feel comfortable recommending it. But so far so good. It doesn't leach ammonia, which saves a lot of cycling time. So you can really add, if you have bacteria, you can add them in right away. And so that's one positive to it. And it seems to be doing good. I mean, the Taiwan bees are doing well in it. That guy's beautiful. Cool focus. And then the PRL are doing well in it as well. But again, Flooville Shrimp Stratum and Brightwell, I don't notice a big difference. And so whichever one you can get a better deal on. Again, I would stick with the Flooville Shrimp Stratum just because I've tested it and proven it, and I feel like I'm comfortable recommending it. Brightwell, I'm not sure yet. The next thing is, let me move this. ADA. I actually talked to a guy at the Aquatic Experience this past year. He's a breeder from over in, I want to say Paris. Yes, he lives near Paris. And so he's a big time breeder, and his go-to substrate is ADA Amazonia. That's what he uses for all of his tanks, and he breeds a ton. So I'm gonna have to say, if you really want to go the right way, ADA Amazonia or ADA any of the soils is going to be an amazing option for you. And what I'm doing here is, you can see them in the pots, right? And you guys can check out my video on plastics to figure out which Tupperware is safe for an aquarium. But the reason I did this is for a couple reasons. Is one, the plants, so you can move them around, you can take them out, you can harvest them, and you can do whatever you need to do. But the other thing, which is the big thing, is buffered substrate only lasts so long. It only lasts 2 years or whatever it is, or maybe 2.5. But let's say 2 years to be safe. It only lasts 2 years, so it's going to go bad. And so if you have it along the bottom, you have to break the whole tank down. In this setup, instead of breaking the whole tank down, after a year I take these two out, replace them, and then the following year I take these two out. So every year I'm replacing substrate in this tank, so I'll never have to break this tank down. So that's my thought on it. So that's my little, I mean, if you can take anything out of this video, that is a great piece of advice, at least for moving forward. And then you can even do an inert substrate on the bottom that isn't gonna dictate the pH whatsoever. And so that's a good method for doing breeding tanks. Let me set this ladder up real quick. Actually, let me just pause the video and I'll set the ladder up. Okay, so we're looking at the top rack right now. And I wanted to show you guys that I'm currently not using the Tupperware containers up here. And the reason why is this. I talked to that breeder in, what is he? He's over in Paris, like I said. And he said what he does is he does about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 inch, just like I do with inert substrate, in his breeding tanks. And he said, again, the reason he does that is because it works perfect for him, and it helps colonize bacteria. You don't have the debris build up. Everything that I was mentioning earlier were the things that he was telling me. And so it all just clicked. So I'm trying this method up here opposed to the Tupperware containers to see if there's a big difference in breeding. So the other thing that I could touch on real quick is I did a video, what was it, last week, where I made oh no, it was actually last Saturday, the Shrimp Saturday video, where I made the big mistake and I added these guys in and the TDS was like way off. And I'm happy to report I really haven't lost any. I was shocked. So these guys are pretty hardy. The only tank that I lost a couple in, I lost I think 6 in total, including the ones that died originally, was in this tank, which was the I want to say the mixed Taiwan or mixed Michelin tank. So like you got a bunch of different colors, but there's still like really pretty shrimp in here. Like, see if I can zoom in on this guy. It's blurry, but yeah, I mean there's some really nice shrimp. So let me move the ladder again, and I'll show you the other 2 tanks. And then this is the red, I believe, and I mean, they're just such nice ones. Like, there's a red one in there, and again, grading on crystal reds or Michelins that are like crystal reds, it just goes by like how nice their color is, like how solid their color is, and then it also goes on how much red they have versus how much white. The more white, the better, as far as their grading scale goes. So there's some in here that like there's next to no red on them. Like there's one up there. Let me try to zoom in. Like the one on the top, you're not able to really see it, but it literally has like the smallest little bead of red up on the top of it. But yeah, so these tanks are doing really good. I'm really impressed with them. It's pretty impressive that this camera focuses on the micro bubbles instead of like what's in the aquarium. But it's not doing a bad job now. So yeah, so just to recap real quick, inert substrate is great for tiger shrimp and Neocaridina genius. That's what it's absolute best for. And the best type of substrate is pool filtered sand, and the brand that I use is Aqua Quartz. And so I use 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of substrate for Neocaridina and tiger shrimp. And then I use Flooville shrimp stratum, which again is fairly cheap in the United States, one of the cheapest substrates out there. And I use it for crystals, crystal reds, crystal blacks. I use it for the Michelins, I use it for the PRL, and for the tangerine tigers. And that substrate is cheap, it's effective. Again, I use it with the Tupperware container method, and then you can change the Tupperware containers every year just to make, or change one of the two every year, or half of them, however many you have, every year, just to make sure you're keeping up and the buffered water isn't being disturbed, like the pH isn't fluctuating a lot. And then ADA is, in my opinion, after talking to some breeders, the best option as far as success when breeding shrimp. Taiwan bees and some of the other species that require more of a buffered substrate. So if you're getting something from an importer, you're probably gonna, like a Taiwan bee or even a crystal from an importer, you're gonna want to do ADA, because most of the time from other countries, anything that requires buffered water is coming in with a pH of less than 6 or pretty low. And so that's what I'd recommend with that. And then I'm still figuring out the bright well. So one method you guys could try is 1/4 to 1/2 inch of substrate, the Tupperware method, and kind of give me your guys' feedback too, because if we're all doing this and we're all trying different things, you guys could really help me and help everyone else in this community to figure out what the best method is to breeding these guys. Because the more we breed in the United States, the better it is for us all, because then we have more access to shrimp. And so at the end, we're all in this together. And hey, if you guys do me a favor, if you're still hanging in with me, if you're still watching this video, please drop me a comment. I'll do my best to respond, but it's been crazy. You guys have no idea. If you guys have been married before and starting a new life and owning a business or any of that kind of stuff, you guys are living life, you know that it gets crazy. So it's been crazy lately. And it's good, it's beautiful, but it is crazy. And so I'm excited for this huge snowstorm that's getting ready to hit. And I'm gonna take a day off tomorrow and just enjoy life. So that's my plan. But drop me a comment if you're listening and tell me you are still listening. And just so I know that you guys are hanging in there, but it's awesome. So I'm really enjoying life. I'm loving life right now. I want to turn the camera around, but I can't, so I just pause the video and turn it around. But thank you guys so much. I really appreciate not only everything you guys do for me, but everything you guys are doing for this community. And like I said, we're all in this together. So I'm excited, super excited. I'm actually bringing you guys a video tomorrow. I want to list a bunch of that stuff for sale. I've gotten like 40 emails about people on ADA and different stuff. So I'm listing it tomorrow, and I'll do a video talking about that. So if you guys are interested in that, stay tuned for that. And honestly, you guys just have a great weekend. And I'll talk to you tomorrow. Later.